Time now for business. Kate Moody joins us. US President Joe Biden has signed into law the first major piece of legislation of his presidency, that huge COVID stimulus plan. Kate.
$1.9 trillion is pretty huge.
How many zeros is a trillion? I don't know.
More than we've got in our bank accounts,
Indeed.
I'd say.
I'd vouch.
The signature had been scheduled for Friday. It was brought forward so that now, some 24 hours after the House of Representatives gave it the final green light, the American Rescue Plan is now law. The $1.9 trillion stimulus plan does include an extension of more generous unemployment benefits, money for state and local governments, schools and vaccination programs, as well as $1,400 stimulus checks, which could begin reaching taxpayers as early as this weekend. Biden will be delivering a primetime address about that aid, the pandemic, and the next steps in just a few hours' time. Take a listen to him speaking in the Oval Office earlier.
And I believe this is, and most people I think do as well, this historic legislation is about rebuilding the backbone of this country and giving people in this nation, working people, middle-class folks, people who built the country, a fighting chance. That's what the essence of it is.
Well, that law does renew unemployment benefits, which had been due to expire this weekend. They cover some 11 million people, including gig economy workers and independent contractors who aren't usually eligible for jobless benefits in the U.S., but who've been put out of work by the pandemic. More than 20 million people in total are still claiming some form of unemployment benefits in the U.S. Last week, the number of new claims dropped slightly to the lowest level since early November. 710,000 new claims were recorded across the country. That's still more than 3 times the weekly average before the pandemic hit. It does suggest that the pace of layoffs may be slowing as America's vaccination program gathers steam. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Strong session for Wall Street. The tech-heavy Nasdaq surging once again. It closed up over 2.5% there. Shares of Tesla rose nearly 5%. Apple, Facebook, and Alphabet all advancing about 3%. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 also hit new record highs as investors welcome that new round of stimulus. The major European indices closed higher as well. Stocks in Paris and Milan outperforming as the European Central Bank confirmed that it will be maintaining its support for the Eurozone economy and picking up the pace of its bond purchases in the coming weeks. Australia has unveiled a €775 million package to support its tourism industry. With restrictions on international visitors projected to last well into the fall of this year, the government is hoping to encourage more domestic travel. Laurent Berstecker has the details.
A lifeline for Australia's struggling tourism industry. Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced a financial package worth over €750 million to help boost local travel and keep the sector afloat until the return of foreign tourists.
To keep people in their jobs, we've got to put planes in the air and we've got to put tourists on the ground. The Australian tourism industry needs more tourists.
In a bid to boost domestic tourism, the stimulus package includes plane ticket subsidies for Australians, allowing them to travel at half price. Another central measure provides low-interest loans for small operators and tourism companies. Last but not least, the plan includes €130 million in financial support for the country's 2 biggest airlines, Virgin Australia and Qantas Airways. Both companies, which have been forced to slash thousands of flights and ground most of their fleets due to travel restrictions, said the subsidies would help them stay in business until international borders reopen.
Now, we know international is some time off. It's probably not going to happen until the end of October. And the great thing about this package is it gets us ready. It allows us to keep those employees, the 7,500 people connected to the airline.
A central pillar of Australia's economy, tourism generates more than 3% of GDP and employs around 5% of the country's workforce. With international borders closed for the past year, the sector has been relying on government support and on a rise in domestic travel to survive, as it waits for the return of foreign visitors.
The UK is giving businesses more time to adapt to new post-Brexit border checks. Strict customs controls had been due to begin in July on goods being imported from the European Union to the UK. Those won't be enforced until next January now. The British government said companies had reported unprecedented challenges compounded by the coronavirus pandemic, and so it would extend a lighter approach for 6 additional months. The flexibility is only one way, though. The European Union has been enforcing its new regulations on British goods since the Brexit transition period ended at the start of this year. France has been under a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew since January in an effort to contain the spread of COVID-19. This week, authorities in the east of the country have been enforcing the restrictions for bakeries, which usually cater to shift workers. It's left some accusing the government of discrimination against those who don't have daytime office hours, as Yinka Oyatade explains.
This bakery normally lifts its shutters at 3:30 a.m, ready to feed hungry workers from the factory next door. But for the past week, it's been forced to change its opening time to 6 a.m. to comply with the national curfew. Now impatient customers flock to get their breakfast as soon as the bakery opens its doors.
Ça m'embête qu'ils ouvrent plus à 3h30, à 5h quand je sors du travail. Mais là, actuellement, je viens à 6h, donc je suis obligé de rester 1 heure à attendre.
For workers in the neighbouring Peugeot plant who start at 4:30 a.m, the new opening times have been hard to swallow.
J'allais pratiquement tous les matins prendre des croissants. Ah non, les lois à la con, hein.
Frustrated with the change, unions have now decided to step in.
J'ai effectivement bien peur que les heures de couvre-feu aient été faites par des gens qui vivent dans les bureaux. Nous, on bosse 24 heures sur 24, 7 jours sur 7, ou quasiment.
Meanwhile, the bakery says in the past week alone, they've lost 100 customers a day.
Au niveau financier, il ne faudrait pas que ça dure trop longtemps, quoi.
This local politician wants a solution to be found as soon as possible.
Je milite pour le fait qu'on donne une dérogation, comme on a su le faire pour les chauffeurs routiers, sur les stations-service. Là, les boutiques sont ouvertes. Là, on a rouvert des restaurants pour les gens du BTP.
The Doubs prefecture say they are watching the situation closely. They are set to offer alternatives in the coming week.
Of course, at this 24-hour news station, there's a certain amount of sympathy for people who work unsociable hours.
Indeed, indeed. But I couldn't compare what we do to what they do. That is proper hard work, isn't it? And they deserve all the help and all the boosts they can get. I'm sure you agree, Kate.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed. Kate Moody with all the business, as ever, on the money.